Time now to check out the food and drink scene in Switzerland with the food scout, Amy Eber. And I can't believe what I'm about to say. Amy Eber, you were hanging out with water buffalo farmers high up in the Emmental in western central Switzerland. First off, how did you find these water buffalo farmers?
Well, on International Food Day, I was invited to a dinner at the U.S. Embassy in Bern, which included a really interesting group of Swiss involved somehow in the food industry on a local level. I was lucky enough to be seated next to Henrietta von Wattenwyl. She's a wonderful woman who works for an organization called The Best of the Region, which promotes the interests of local farmers in cantons Bern, Aargau, Solothurn, and central Switzerland. She told me to contact her if I ever needed help, and it literally took me 10 seconds to tell her I was looking to meet a water buffalo farmer. So, on a snowy day a few weeks ago, Henriette met me at the Schangnau and Emmental train station, drove me up the mountain in a snowstorm to meet the Bieri family and their herd of water buffalo, which, by the way, are a different animal entirely from the American buffalo, which is actually a bison.
Well, tell us more about water buffalo. How did water buffalo end up in Switzerland?
Well, as you know, they're native to Asia, but they were introduced to North Africa and the Near East as far back as 600 AD, and during the Middle Ages, returning crusaders brought them to Europe. Now you really find herds in places such as Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania, Albania, Hungary, and parts of Serbia, Austria, and Italy. But back to how they ended up in Emmental. Mr. Bieri told me in 1992, a Romanian agricultural student spent several months working on his dairy farm. He regaled them with stories about the water buffalo in Romania, which are valued by the farmers for their milk and their meat, as well as their ability to haul and pull plows. So intrigued, Mr. Bieri visited Romania 2 years later. In 1996, a group of 5 Emmental farmers, including Mr. Bieri, imported 15 water buffalo. They had 14 females and 1 male from Romania.
Lucky guy.
Yeah, I know. The females were to be divided up among these 5 farmers, by a lottery, and the male was shared among all the 5 farms as a stud. But sadly, the male and the 5 females were found to have a deadly and really highly contagious viral disease called red nose and had to be destroyed. But these guys persevered. In 2000, they imported many more buffalo, and several once again had to be put down, but the remaining were and are really healthy and thriving. In case you're worried, the lack of a stud for some time really wasn't devastating since the females were artificially inseminated and the healthy babies were born.
Well, Kent, you mentioned that there was illness and so forth, but can they tolerate the Swiss winter weather? Did that have anything to do with it?
No, and that's kind of interesting. First of all, I always thought of water buffalo as being really heat tolerant given where they're originally from. But it turns out they really aren't, since they have very few sweat glands. And that's why they're always hanging out in water in these extremely hot countries in weather conditions. As for the cold in Switzerland, they don't really love that either. Each individual hair on a water buffalo is much thicker than a cow's, but they actually don't have as many. So when winter comes, they're quite comfortable hanging out in the barn, and the water buffalo are let outside every day. But they told me 30 minutes later, these animals have so had it with the cold, they just make their own way back into the barn.
All right. Well, you mentioned cows. What's the benefit to farmers owning water buffalo rather than cows?
Well, buffalo milk is double the fat content of cow milk. I did try some, and interestingly, it tasted almost the same as cow's milk. The farmers earned 4 times more per liter of this milk, but the yield is only a quarter that of cows, so it is kind of a wash. But even though they eat roughly the same amount as cows, they produce less milk, so they really do thrive on a lower quality feed. So I guess it's a bit more profitable, but I think it's equally through the love of these animals that these farmers choose to continue to raise them. The Bieris adore these creatures. They are so sweet. They were nuzzling with me in the barn, letting me hug them. They're really, really sweet animals.
Well, you mentioned the buffalo milk, a lot more fat than cow's milk. Is that they use it then to make cheese? Cheesemakers in the area use this milk. Mm-hmm. And the meat too, I guess?
Yeah, I visited a cheesemaker who uses the buffalo milk, and I'll talk about him in an upcoming show. But as with the cows, when the babies are born, typically only females are kept since there's only one male in the herd. So the young males are sold to a farmer who raises them and then when they're full grown sells them for meat. Buffalo meat, by the way, isn't marbled with fat like beef is. The fat builds up on top of the flesh, actually like humans. So the meat itself is only half the cholesterol of the beef cuts.
That's the Food Scout this week. My thanks to Amy Eber. Amy will post a picture of a Swiss water buffalo from the only organic buffalo farm in Emmental on our website, as well as a link to the organization, The Best of the Region. Again, all that at our website, worldradio.ch.